Hello and what is up, YouTube? My name is Jacob Toman, and welcome to today's discussion here at Toman's Tome, where we discuss a parable on preaching, or we present a parable on preaching. So let's dive into today's little parable on preaching. Preaching the Word of God is like a group of travelers on the road being led by a guide with a flashlight. The moon is covered by a dark and cloudy night. Though its natural light ought to point us to God's glorious majesty as revealed in creation, the clouds of sin block out much of the light the travelers might safely follow. So the company of travelers take up the service of one who is also going along the road. Stick to the road along the light as I shine it, says the guide. As the travelers follow, some have eyes that wander off from the light on the road to peer into the darkness. Some find themselves off the road altogether, and the guide must call the company to a halt. While, through the shining guidance of the light, the guide finds the lost traveler and returns with them to the company on the road. "Why did you stray from following the light on the road?" asked the guide. "I don't know," responded the wayward traveler. "I guess I wanted to feel what it was like to be off the road for a bit. I wanted to see how different it was to be without the road and the light upon it." The guide both rebuked and encouraged the wayward traveler. "The road is always here," said the guide. "It is narrow and has a much different feel to walk upon than the rough countryside. The darkness of the rough countryside will not bring you to your destination." As the travelers continued on, the guide's pace quickened, and as often happens when walking in a group, the travelers began to become separated from one another. Some were farther along and closer to the light, and others began to straggle behind, unable to keep pace. Soon there was a bend in the road and a hill. The guide and the light of his lamp was lost on the other side of the hill. One of the travelers, who was keeping pace with the guide, reminded the guide, "You have been tasked with guiding us who are in our party, yet some of us are lagging behind on the far side of the hill." The guide looked behind and realized he only had a few close to him. "Come with me," said the guide. "We must retrace our steps to regain the stragglers." There was some grumbling among those who had kept pace with the guide. "Why should we have to walk back again?" they said. "Shouldn't we simply wait here or even walk ahead ourselves? We can well feel the difference between the road and the countryside." The guide rebuked them sharply. "You know the feel of the road on this part, but you will need the light to see which way to turn when the road forks. You will need the light to know what dangers await you and what pitfalls have been dug into the road by wicked false guides." The grumbling group fell silent, and the guide continued. "If any of you were on the other side of the hill, would you want your fellow travelers to leave you in the darkness? What if I should falter or fall on my way back to the stragglers? Which one of you will carry on the light to guide you on the right course to take?" And with that, the guide and those keeping pace retraced their steps until every one of the party was reunited. One of the younger travelers asked the guide, "How do you know this way so well? Have you traveled this road much?" The guide responded with a smile, "I have traveled this road many times before, but I often forget my way along this road. If I didn't have the light, I would certainly be lost. The light keeps my feet on the right road, and the travelers who I guide remind me of the sober and noble task of walking by the light." When they reached their destination, the guide and travelers exchanged thanks. The guide gave to each traveler a flashlight of their own. "Take these, that you might be equipped to help other travelers you may meet on your many journeys." The guide took a deep breath and turned to walk back on the road. The younger traveler stopped the guide. "Where are you going now?" The guide turned and said, "To help with more travelers along the road." The young traveler held up the flashlight and asked, "May I come with you to learn more to guide others along the road?" The guide smiled and nodded, and the two began to walk together to meet the next group of travelers on the road. Thanks so much for joining us for today's discussion right here at Toman's Tome. I hope you've learned something new and exciting right here at Toman's Tome.